Welcome to this week's review of Mashle Magic and Muscle Chapter 71, Mash Bernadette and the Origin of the Greatest Magic User. From a title like that, clear we were going to get some important information regarding either Father or Wahlberg, as those two have demonstrated abilities far surpassing anything else demonstrated in the series to date. The chapter starts off with Father having just recovered from being hit in the face by Mash, while Mash himself stays aloft by continuously swinging his legs at high speed, creating a twister-like effect around his legs. If anyone has seen One Piece, then they should be familiar with a similar technique used by Cyberpole 9 and Sanji, a movement technique which requires incredible leg strength to fight against gravity. This also conveniently confirms that Wahlberg had transported them into a higher aerial space rather than another dimension, despite the darkness and odd shapes seen in previous chapters, which might have been the result of his magic or just a lack of emphasis put on the backgrounds by the artist. Either way, Wahlberg is understandably distressed seeing as how Mash is Father's major target, asking what he is doing here as well as telling him he needs to go. Mash's response is both typical of him but also rather hilarious in context, telling possible the strongest magic user he has ever formally met, that he was taught to be kind to his elders. Making it even funnier is the fact that Wahlberg mentally acknowledges that Mash sees him as nothing more than an old man trying to cross the street. Outside of just being as funny moment, this really puts Mash's perspective on show, demonstrating to us the audience that despite the power one might possess, Mash doesn't recognize or isn't affected by that power with regards to how he views and deals with individuals. In Mash's eyes, an old person is just that, no matter how strong they are, and a powerful person is just a person, being basically the antithesis of the society he lives in and perhaps exactly what Adam and Wahlberg were seeking. Of course, Father can't just let this go on and instead decides to attack them both. A giant sideways maw or a cracked egg, depending on your interpretation of it, forms around the pair, enveloping them in complete darkness, as Father explains that by continuously reconfiguring his body, he gained the ability to steal other people's magic, having acquired Adam's darkness magic as well, which is curious because Adam's corpse was using that magic before. Did he absorb it after Wahlberg proved too powerful for Necros to defeat even when using Adam? Speaking of Necros, is he dead? I am assuming he is because we haven't seen him or Adam since their disappearance a couple chapters back. But right now, Father is attempting to take Wahlberg's space magic from him, which for the most part succeeds, as Mash breaks them out of the egg with Wahlberg held in his arms. The old man, already having suffered a great amount of damage, continues to cough up blood as Father points his wand at him, a wand that now resembles that of Wahlberg's own, and casts spaces about, obliterating a hug chunk out of a mountain along with another mountain beyond that, doing immense damage and leaving Mash surprised. Although not enough to actually put on a serious face, but he does sum it up rather well, but just saying "darn" with a deadpanned expression. Wahlberg is understandably alarmed, both because his magic was taken, but also because Father's magic capacity is greater than his. All the spells that he casts seem to have a significant increase in damage potential. Father, holding what looks like Wahlberg's wand, says that he has the power to rule the world, so it is his for the taking. Unfortunately, power isn't all you need to rule. Even the most powerful person could never control everything and everyone. At that point you're no longer ruling, you're controlling, and at that point what is there left for you to strive for? Not that I think Father has considered such a long-term goal beyond attaining more and more power. And with Mash being the next piece in his quest for power, Wahlberg realizes that if Mash gets taken by Father, then there will be no hope, which honestly is not even an understatement. A magical power like Father combined with the physicality of Mash, I do not think anything short of an actual god intervening in this series or a wielder of one of the Master Canes would stand a chance against him. Of course, Mash does not really consider those stakes and attempts to kick him anyway, but as his leg gets close, tendrils of darkness attempt to snag his leg. Quickly retreating, Mash frowns ever so slightly, commenting that it was close, and for Mash to say that Father's skill with darkness magic must be quite something. Father, like any good villain, cannot help but stick it to Mash, asking if he felt the great difference in the power between them, before stating he will be taking Mash back with him, or rather he would do if his own body hadn't begun to break down, blocks splitting apart and separating from him as shockwaves of energy seem to flow off him with painful effects for Father, who begins to clutch at his head, as one of his eyes looks like it is ready to pop clean out of his head. Mash is understandable lost, but thankfully Wahlberg is able to explain the situation for us and the weakness in Father's abilities. Absorbing Wahlberg's magic put a strain too great on his body, so essentially, he is like a glass filled to the breaking point and has started to crack. Of course, this is no time for celebrations, as Father, through no small amount of effort, seems to regain his control, although his body is still shifting. Speaking to Mash, he calls him an ingredient and nothing more. His only purpose in life is to help Father become a greater being. Wahlberg is quick to shut that shit down, saying that's just Father's ego talking. Mash has the right to decide the course of his own life, and Mash of course agrees with this assessment. No way would he just roll over and die for the sake of someone like Father gaining more power. And then Father reveals how he seems to embody the very worst part of this world's political and religious standings, saying how a human without magic will never be able to live in this world. This seems to strike a chord with Mash, who widens his eyes slightly, but I doubt he will be seriously affected by this or anything Father says, given how Mash knew from the very beginning he was setting himself up for death when he entered the tournament, and even before that when he entered into the world of magic, a place he didn't belong in. Of course, trying to prove a point, Father attacks Wahlberg with what looks like a square hammerhead, and of course after being drained Wahlberg has basically no magic left to avoid the attack. Of course Mash, just like how Wahlberg wasn't taking any of Father's crap about Mash's fate, Mash isn't taking any of Father's crap with regards to how people without magic can't survive in this world, and tackles Wahlberg out of the way, comedically causing him to cough up blood, but thankfully not actually knocking him unconscious. And then as Wahlberg is thinking on how nothing they do matters, as Father has obtained a strength too great for them to defeat, Mash can't help but say his own piece, about how in a world where magic is everything, the strongest magic user is some evil guy, so it is convenient that is all the reason he needs to beat Father's magic with his muscles so that the world will accept him. This seems to agitate Father somewhat as he frowns at the thought before laughing instead, saying how he will need some time to get used to the power now flowing through his newly constructed body, so he will leave for now. This takes Wahlberg by surprise, but I guess the extent of the internal damage he took from Wahlberg's magic is too much for him to consider risking the time it would take to capture Mash here. So instead, as he is departing, he gives the order to the monsters below, finally confirming they are just supremely high up in the air above the Colosseum. The order? For them to combine into some gigantic monstrosity, with many heads, wrapped in chains and dwarfing the whole arena. This is some Attack on Titan stuff right here. And as Father leaves, he tells them they shall meet again, provided this newly formed monster does not finish them off first. This thing seems to put even Mash on edge from the way he glances down at it from up in the sky, and Wahlberg too isn't in much better shape, with the final panel of the chapter being one of the monster's head or perhaps all of them roaring. So with this chapter ending with Father retreating to recover, I can see us entering into a recovery arc, and I also have a very bad feeling about Wahlberg and how certain individuals Kofutakov is going to take having a depowered old man as part of the government or running a school. I could see him being forced into retirement and suffering the same type of discrimination as Mash has undergone. But you tell me what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like, and if you want to keep up to date when I upload new videos, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell. With that all said and done, I have been the Anonymous Weeb, and I wish you a good day or night wherever you are.